Well, hello again. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. I did pretty good. I went over and the last couple of years, my grandson and his wife, I go to their place for Thanksgiving, which is kind of nice. And his wife, Tanya, she's one of these ladies who will cook enough food to feed 4 armies, okay? Where everybody takes home a bunch of food when they're done. It's the way it used to be in the old days. I'm sure it's a tradition that's still carried on to this day. I don't know where it came from, but it seems to be passed down from woman to woman to woman without saying. It's just one of those things they absorb one from another. And it's great. I mean, there's so much stuff to eat. God, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, I had a good time. I hope you all had the same experience. I'm looking forward to Christmas now. I love this time of year. It's my favorite. Got to get my tree up here in about another week. Anyway, meanwhile, I've got some good news, finally. The audio output transformer that had this dangling wire that I thought had pulled out and been broken, no, it's not broken after all. This audio output transformer has been replaced. The original was replaced with, it looks, according, I brushed this by Brandon, he said it looks like it might be an old PA system, public address system transformer. He uses those a lot for his radio repair. And you can tell it's been replaced because everything else on this chassis is all funky looking, but when it comes to this, nice shiny paint. Now, it wasn't replaced, recently. It was, but it's been replaced since prior to 1934 when this radio was made. It was probably replaced in the 50s. It went bad. So when I took it off, I looked at that and I said, let me get this thing where it'll stay. Come on now. There we go. Now, if you look at it, you'll see where it says primary right there. This is the input from the power out tube. Goes into the 2 primary windings, these 2 red ones. Now the other side, the secondary, says voice coil, and it has low and high. Okay, low and high. So right now, the thing is connected to, the output is connected to the low side. Okay. And this red wire here that was dangling in the air that I thought had been broken off or pulled out, that goes to the high. So since it's not being used, they just went ahead and taped off the end right here. Pretty cool, huh? Brendan said, leave it alone. It should be okay in low. I could have put it in high if I wanted. This is one of these deals where, I remember on the Antique Radio Forum when I first started out, I had to buy an audio output transformer and it had a whole lot of connections on the secondary. And I said, geez, and they had them all labeled, 5, 10, 20, whatever. So I got a hold of, I just put up a posting on the Antique Radio Forum and said, how do I hook it up? Which one do I hook it up to? And a guy by the name of Norm Leal jumped in there. He's an old timer. I don't know if he's still around. But he said, John, just connect them all and go with the one that sounds the best. I said, cool. I can do that. So that's what happened. So apparently to these people, it sounded the best connected to low, but I could have just as easily disconnected here. I could have disconnected this wire from this bundle right here, then just taken this and connected it in this place. Just go with the one that sounds the best on the secondary. Now keep in mind, one more time, I want everybody to understand what these audio output transformers are, because it took me quite a while to finally get it firmly in my brain. Let's go to the schematic and I'll show you. Well, you can see on the schematic that the transformer that's in there right now, it was not like the original, okay? The original didn't have a high and a low connection on the secondary right here. It just had a, one side was grounded and the other side was connected to the voice coil. And the 2 wires coming out of the transformer, that's the way it was. But the one they selected worked fine, Well, we already know one side is connected to the voice coil. That's this one right here coming out of that low part, that low label on there. And zoom in here, there we go. The other side is this other white wire and it goes over, yes, it is grounded right there. It's soldered to ground right there. It's kind of an interesting place to solder to a ground, huh? I think I would have chosen another spot, but that's ground right there. Let's hook it back up. We don't have to do anything. All I got to do is, put the old screws and washer back in, put it right back where I found it. Now the next thing we have to do after we get that thing put back on is we got to deal with this little baby here, this resistor right here. And once we get this done, back up there, and once we fix this little deal, we can clean all the little tube sockets, pins, all the pins we're going to use. We'll be using old pipe cleaners and alcohol to do that. For those of you who don't know what a pipe cleaner is, this is what it looks like. These little fuzzy things, they're long. We're going to be using these to clean each of the holes in the tube sockets. And once we get done with that, we're going to hook it up and bring it up on the Variac and see what we can do. Can we get some noise out of it? If we can tune in a station, that'll be the end of all this. And I'll be a happy camper. Because that was the goal of the entire series. Well, let me get the transformer back on. Now, in an earlier video, I pointed out that I thought this was either orange or red that had faded out, which would have made it either a 300K or a 200K resistor. This is a 2-watter. But, you know, I kept looking at it and looking at it. I said, that could have been a brown. It's kind of a weird looking brown, even though it looks more orange than anything. So I measured it. Sure enough, it measured 97K. So that's actually a brown, black, and yellow. And it was 100K at one time. 100,000 ohms. Now, why is it there? Let's go back to our schematic again. It's important that you always check your schematic before you make assumptions, okay? Well, here's our intermediate frequency transformer. This is the tube, the 77 tube, and this is the little grid cap on top. You saw the grid caps in the last video. It's just a little square outside the tube. That's what that means right there, okay, the grid cap. Sometimes they're the plate cap, so you have to, you know, pay attention. If you don't know which it is, go to your tube manual. You can even go online, just call up 77 vacuum tube, and that would have told you that's the grid cap, okay? And you can see there's no resistor in this line right here coming out of that IF transformer. No resistor at all. So we're going to get rid of that booger, and we're going to put it back the way it was originally. So how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to unsolder it here, and I'm going to unsolder this clip off of here. Then we're going to put a splice in with this wire. Make sure it's long enough to reach the grid cap on the 77 tube, or the 7 or the 6C6 is what they have in there now. Okay, so let's get that job done. Now, if you ever have to do this, try to preserve as much of this wire as you can. Don't be cutting it back to here. I just nipped off just a tiny little bit on the end and then stripped it back just a hair and soldered this wire onto there. Got a nice solid connection. Now I'm going to take this little old heat shrink I got here, slide it up the wire. I'm going to cover that connection, get the solder joint right in the center if possible, as close as I can, and then I'm going to hit it with the heat gun. Alright, that's done. Now I've gone ahead and cleaned the clip off. I wire brushed it real good and straightened it up and got it so where it was open back here to where the wire would fit up underneath there. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. See, it's got to fit. It's got to fit in that little deal there. And come on. Yeah, it's got to fit right up in that slot there. Then I'll kind of close in on it, and the wire will come up through that little round hole. I'll solder it on the top. Alright, now we're going to determine the length. I think about probably, let me get my cutters in place here so I can, you don't want this thing to be exceptionally long, and you don't want it to be too short either. Give yourself just a little extra in case you make a mistake on stripping. That happens quite often. Well, that's how I have it right now. I ran the wire up through the hole, bent it over so it would hold it in place. I'm going to go ahead and solder it. I'll probably clip part of that off. And then once I get that soldered, then I'll go ahead and remove this and crimp these two ears against the insulation. Well, that's what I'm talking about. I've got the insulation all the way through those dog ears to the opposite side. If I'd have gone much further and then tried to solder or you know, soldered the wire up on the other side of the hole, I soldered it from the opposite side up here, it would have melted the insulation. You don't want that. So it got hot enough as it was, but it didn't damage it. So now all I have to do is pull these two ears in, and I'll show you what that looks like next. Well, there you go. I just brought the two pieces together, crimped them against the insulation without overlapping, and if I ever have to take them out, it'll be easy to do. And I won't whoever's fixing the radio wouldn't, he wouldn't break off one of the tabs, alright? Okay. Well, let's get it, let's clean all these little tube socket holes. This is how I do it. Take a little bit of alcohol, pour it in a container. These things are so dirty and so old that it's probably going to take a whole lot of pipe cleaners. It all depends on what they look like. I'm going to do this 77 tube socket first. Fold them over nice and tight. You can't do this with tube sockets that have very, very small holes. This only works on good size holes. Just kind of soak it up real good. It's no problem. Then just take it and run it down through, up and down. Hopefully these won't be too bad. I'll show you how we do one socket. The rest will be all exactly the same. No sense in going over and over it. Give those babies a good clean out. Don't worry about getting a lot of alcohol around. It won't hurt it a bit. You want those things to have good contact with your tube pins. Well, that wasn't bad. They were a lot cleaner than I thought. I've seen some that where when I got done, it was just all black on the end, These are pretty clean, relatively speaking. But anyway, that's done. One more thing. It's going to be a fun thing. You'll see. I want to know if the audio output transformer is going to work when I apply the power to it, to the chassis. There's no sense in going through all this crap if this thing is really no good. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 9-volt battery. I'm going to hook it from this pin right here, which is the screen grid on the output tube. And I'm going to hook the other end to the plate. And that'll give me some voltage through the primary, which will be transferred to the secondary, which will go to the voice coil, which will go out the speaker. We want to hear some kind of noise, just a static, anything that shows me that the signal is being passed through, okay? The DC is being, sent through. So we need to find out what pin number the screen grid is here on the 42, and what pin number is the plate. You just there again, you just go online, and if you have a tube manual, no problem. If you don't, you just go online, type in 42 vacuum tube, and you'll find a site that has a drawing of the inside of the tube. This is the Radio Museum, of course. And you come down here and you can see, let's take a look at this thing here. Let me zoom in a little closer. Well, the plate is pin 2 and the screen grid is pin 3. Well, that ought to be easy. I took my 9-volt battery and I just hooked a couple of alligator clips to it, and then on the other end I hooked one to a small skinny screwdriver I got, and this one here to a pair of tweezers. Let me get this thing a little tighter on there. There we go. And there again, I'll go over it. The two large holes are the dividing point between the last pin and the first one. So going counterclockwise, this will be the first one. So that's pin 2 and pin 3. So I need to connect this baby. This one's already in pin 3. I need to connect this one, or touch pin 2. See if we get any sound at all. It may be difficult to hear. I don't know, because that speaker was kind of broken. You remember this speaker cone's broken. I'm going to get the microphone down in here while I just take this baby here and just stick it down the hole and touch a few times. See if you can hear it. I don't know. Okay, here we go. I think you should be able to hear that. That audio output transformer is good. Alright, let's get the tubes in and fire it up. When I was on the Antique Radio Forum, where I did a lot of postings when I first started all this stuff, I used to use the term fire it up. Other people used the term let's fire it up. There was this one guy, he jumped in there and he said, I don't like that term fire up. I don't think you should use it. Blah, blah, blah. Some guys need to get a life. Well, we're just about ready, guys. I'm going to go ahead and this is our antenna coming in right here. You'll remember that antenna from the beginning. Comes in, it connects to the antenna coil right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook up the antenna up in the attic there. Hook that baby right there like that with alligator wire. I've got it going up here to this thing I set up years ago, and from there it runs out this black wire all the way up through the ceiling to right there. I don't know if you can see that or not. Goes through the ceiling to a 75-foot wire up in the attic. The final thing I did was I took some contact spray and I sprayed all down inside the variable capacitor plates on both sides here and around the back over here. I sprayed where they stick through the hole, where you can see them through the hole. Gave it a good spraying. It's nice and smooth. You know, it wiggles around a little bit, but I don't think there's any problem with the grounding. But it's going to be nice. All right, last thing to do is check our power cord to make sure there's nothing strange about it. I don't trust anything on the radio someone else has worked on, okay? Brendan, same way. Cord looks good. It's solid. Okay, let's plug her in. All right, fire in the hole. Isolation transformer on. Variac on. So far there's no problem. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the Variac and I'm going to watch these. I'm going to watch the voltmeter here. You've all seen me do this 1,000 times. I'm going to watch the voltmeter here. It's shooting at 120 right now. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that down. I'll bring it down to about, let's take it down to about, I don't know if you can see that. Let me focus in here so you can see what's going on. I think I'm going to start it out about 30 volts. Right in this area right there. Start about 30 volts. And then I'm going to bring up the Variac slowly while I'm watching the current. This is what I care most about. We are on the 1 amp scale, top scale. Okay? So here we go. Let's turn on the radio. And we did get a jump in current there when it came on. Surge current. It's called surge current. Keep in mind we haven't changed the capacitors underneath or anything like that, so I'm expecting more current draw than normal. Our current draw pretty much stabled out just before 500 milliamps, and I've got it up to about 122, 123 volts right now. So let's wiggle a few tubes here. We should have at least some noise here. We're getting some noise there. And of course our rectifier, we're not going to get any, but... Well, it looks like we're going to have to go to video number 5 on this, which is totally unexpected. However, I've decided to make video number 5 fun. We're going to do something you've never seen before, at least the newbies have never seen it. Some of the old-timers probably have. And Brendan, he thinks it's a hack, and I shouldn't do it. I think it's going to be fun. But, you know, around Christmas time, old Brendan, you know, he becomes the Ebenezer Scrooge kind anyway. I'm kind of used to it every season, you know. But he doesn't like the idea. I do. We're going to do it my way. He's probably going to be upset. But I think in the end, as long as you learn something you've never seen before, it may come in handy somewhere down the line. So until next time, this is John.